my screen, probably the most common phrase of this year. Can you see it?
We can, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So let's get started. Thank you for having me, Sierra. Sierra invited me for this talk, so I'm really happy to be here. Like Sierra told, my first talk ever was in Women Who Code in Mexico City, and for me that was a life-changing process. Uh, I was zero experience, and I was trying to start giving conference and create content, and the only thing I was doing was creating content in my blog. So Women Who Code opened a world of possibilities for me, and I'm really thankful for that. If you want to be part of more content and more conference, you can reach to your Women Who Code organization and try to give it a try, because we create a more inclusive and more amazing work together, especially in tech. So give it a try. After that, so my name is Dinorah, and this talk is a mobile perspective of Kotlin Multiplatform. I love Kotlin. Everybody loves Kotlin. But today I'm gonna drop some big bombs here. So let's get started, guys. And Kotlin, first things first, is not only for Android. I know everybody thinks about Kotlin and thinks of Google, thinks about JetBrains. In 2017, Google introduced Kotlin as the main citizen language. Like they were going to be full support, and there was tons and tons of Medium articles and blog posts saying Airbnb is moving completely to Kotlin. It's moving, someone else is moving completely to Kotlin, etc., etc., etc. And that was really cool. It happened to me. I was trying to start a new app back in the days, and I decided to drop everything, all the code we have in Java, to start doing it on Kotlin. So it's not only for Android. I know it is like the perception, but it's bigger than that. And I'm gonna do it because it's for multiple things. And when I say multiple things, I mean really for multiple things. I have a list. We have a version that is Kotlin Multiplatform. Okay, it's like properly, it's a cross-platform solution that we are going to be talking today. And we have the part of the server side that is amazing, it's incredible, and it's one of the most incredible sides of Kotlin. And we have the part that is obviously huge and has a huge community, that is Android. And we have native that we are going to be talking today, because mobile cross-platform is actually also Kotlin native. So we are going to give it a go in that. I know there is a lot of confusion usually about native code in mobile cross-platform. So we are going to do that. And we also have web development. That is a huge part of Kotlin Multiplatform, of Kotlin, sorry. And we have data science that is it's getting bigger by the day. So every day that passes, more people are starting to do some intervention and trying to know what they can do with Kotlin Multiplatform and with Kotlin for data science. So today, this is my first bomb of the day. Android and iOS are actually very similar, and I know if there is iOS engineers or Android engineers, they are gonna say no, but they are. And I'm not saying because you have a phone and you have direct contact on the user. That's one of the parts, but also there is a special part that make Android and iOS really common, like really similar. They are Unix-like, and I'm saying Unix-like because they are some flavor of Unix, their own flavor of Unix, and they are trying to solve some problems using this operating system, and they have a wrapper of the things they want to do. So at the end of the day, in the CPU architecture, there might be difference, but in the logic inside, maybe they are not so far away from each other. This is my favorite part because usually Android and iOS have multi-threading operation. Like you can have a thread when the user is interacting. Maybe he's making a scroll, he's in a computer doing a click, he's in a phone trying to select or make a bigger picture. And that is the activity thread, right? And we might have some heavy thread operations that we don't want to block the first thread when the user is interacting, right? So that part is a secondary thread. This secondary thread is especially for, I don't know, maybe writing a file, maybe going to a database and try to pull data from the database. Uh, it's also the part that you are doing I/O operation, network connection, maybe some data or manipulation, or maybe some mathematical operations. So you have multi-threading, right? And this threading depends of the things you want to do. So if maybe you are using a file, you are trying to write a file and the file is really big, you are going to do it in a file, in a thread that is specific for that. You are not going to use I/O because you are not doing a network operation. If you want to do a network operation, you are going to do it in that thread. So they have multi-threading operation. And one of my favorite parts is that they have files and primitives, values, or ways to saving data. Uh, Pretty much, if you have an app to date or maybe a website, you need to save some data somehow. It's okay to have it on the server in the cloud and everything is going to be cool, but you have to save some data somehow because you don't want to depend on this network. Maybe your app is going to be offline first integration or things like that. And if you are doing that, you have to save some data. Maybe it's a file, a simple file like a TX, a normal file, maybe a JSON, something like that. Or maybe you are saving data in more heavy ways, like with a database that you might need. For example, in Lonely Planet, if you don't know which app is I'm talking, it's a guides for people that are doing some tourists, and you might have some books. And when you download the app, we need to give you the chance to have all your data available over time without having connection to network. Imagine you are traveling to another country and you don't have internet everywhere. So you might need this, right? And usually these databases are some version of SQL. Yeah, that's the real. I know uh, you might be using Core Data for iOS and might using Room or Rion for Android, or also Rion, but especially Room and Core Data are probably really, they are CQL at the end of the day. There might be another flavor with sparkles on the top, but at the end of the day is that. Uh, and my second bomb of today is that Kotlin and Swift are really like cousins. I know. Everybody is gonna say they are not. There are obviously incredible difference that make Kotlin and Swift an incredible and powerful language, but they kind of look the same. If you see this, this is a switch. It has a case, and for Kotlin, you will might have a when, right? And if you are trying to search to having some support for Kotlin Multiplatform because you already know what you are doing, uh, you might have engineers on the iOS side, right? And these iOS side engineers are going to be doing code in Swift. But if they want to participate in Kotlin Multiplatform, they have to learn Kotlin. And for the Android side, if they are Java engineers and they have to move to Kotlin, uh, for my own experience, I'm gonna tell you that this learning curve is gonna be really small. It's gonna be really plain, and it's going to be really easy for you to handle these interactions. Uh, you're gonna learn it like incredible fast, and the reason is that is because Kotlin and Swift look pretty much the same. They have a similar architecture. They are null safety free and things like that. So when your engineers from iOS or your engineers of Android try to convert this and try to start using Kotlin multiplatform as a library distribution property, you will end up with teams that have to learn this language, and this language is gonna help you to start delivering things, right? It's going to be really easy. I hope it's going to be really easy. You will learn it really fast. Multiple teams are already moving, uh, and they are doing it all right. They are doing it right. So even engineers that are not doing Windows or maybe GS, they are moving in. They are trying and learning Kotlin, and this is getting really cool because we are getting a lot of feedback from the community. But the learning curve is really really small. Like they are moving really fine. But what is going on and what it is with Kotlin Multiplatform, right? Kotlin Multiplatform is an SDK for business logic. And I'm going to say it's only business logic. There's nothing of UI. There's a lot of people trying to do UI, but it's only for business logic. And Kevin Galligan is one of the Touchland partners. He's an incredible engineer. You can follow him in Twitter. Is Key Galligan, and he always say this quote, and I always put it on the stock because it's a huge disclaimer, right? Shared logic is the history of computer. And there's nothing that I can see that is grown in that. If we are sharing logic, we can build faster, we can address bugs faster, we can make sure that the things we are delivering to our users are the same proposal. No, we are not losing data, we are not trying to make some calculations that are not going to be the same on Android and iOS. That is really common. Like, it's really common. Even one analytic. When you are doing analytics, you might put uppercase in a place that you don't want an uppercase, and iOS could put a lowercase. And this small detail can make you have two different analytics that you have to go and solve on Firebase or maybe in Mixpanel or maybe in Google Analytics. And it makes no sense to make it double, right? Why to do that? So this is one of the most incredible quotes. I give it to you. Go and follow Kevin Galligan. It's Key Galligan in Twitter. It's amazing, and he have the most incredible tutorials of Kotlin Multiplatform. Probably you will learn a lot just reading his Twitter thread. So go ahead, follow Kevin. It's amazing. And Kotlin Multiplatform is for business logic, especially because we are talking about three parts, right? We have the presentation layer, some domain layer, and some data layer. I'm not saying to go and use clean architecture or just drop MVVM or go and use Viper. At the end of the day, every architecture has this, right? Has a presentation layer that is mostly where you are using Swift UI, Jetpack Compose, some view models. Maybe you are doing animations, you are doing some cool image and things like that. This is incredible and difficult part, right? And the domain layer is when you have domains, entities, use cases, whatever you want to have. And these are pretty much some part of the logic. And you can have the part of the business logic. And I mean it, the part that you are connecting to the server, you are saving data, you are making some encryptations. This really part, when you are interacting with these details, these specific parts, is really, really important because it should be the same. If you have an app for Android, iOS, Windows, and Mac, it should be the same. You cannot have business logic that is connecting to different places if you are just maybe retrieving from a server a list of products. It should be the same, and it should be delivered to the same devices independently. It should be work and make things the same way, right? So there is no restriction for the business logic. You can have databases, you can have analytics, you can have nothing. You can have little small things, and because the appearance and the behavior is going to be the same for your app. And I'm going to tell you why in a couple of slides. But the appearance and the behavior, even the performance, is going to be full native. If you're doing an app in iOS, it's going to be the same. You are using Kotlin Multiplatform in iOS, and it's going to be exactly what you were waiting for. Nothing more, nothing less. It's not going to have a weird experience, a weird sensation. It's going to be fully native. And when I say fully native, it's at the end, you're going to have exactly what iOS needs for a CPU architecture. And it's going to be the same for Android. You want to have something that is going to be running on the GVM, is going to be fully native. And the most incredible part of Kotlin Multiplatform is that you can try it before you buy it. Usually when you are using some framework to do some maybe Flutter or React Native or Xamarin, or I don't know, there's a lot of that, Cordova or things like that, you usually have to make a huge compromise. And when I say a huge compromise, is that you are getting married with that code base. If you start doing it in React, you are gonna have to start migrating all your code that you already have and do that. If you want to move to native, it's going to be the same. For Flutter is pretty much the same. No? But with Kotlin Multiplatform, you can give it a try before you buy it. We don't ruin, and I'm not saying go and open a new project. No, with your project right now, with the company project you are using, you want to try it, you can do it. In a simple, it's fully optional. You don't have to rewrite anything or do anything. You can just put just a small thing and see if that works for you. It can be only the analytics, maybe the sharp preference, or the any user defaults for iOS. It can be a really, really small change to see and try that if it works for you. You don't have to make a huge compromise, and that's probably the most important part of Kotlin Multiplatform. You can give it a try with just a tiny little seed and see if that works for you. Because every architecture and every company, the decision they are making, the information you need, and the architecture you are using to build a product depends on the product. It doesn't depend on the technology. This is not a recipe. Building an app is not a recipe. It's about solving a problem. So that's a part of Kotlin Multiplatform, and this is a disclaimer, but I'm gonna do a huge announcement because and there's a couple of days ago, Netflix said that they are already using Android and iOS in his studio apps. So that's really cool. A big company like Netflix is doing it. If you're trying to check it out, there's a lot of Case Studio, GVMware, Quizlet, Netflix, also Cash App. You know, for example, the special part of Cash App in Square is that they already have a shard code base with JavaScript. They were having just a shard code part with JavaScript, and they were pushing that from the server to the phones, and they were automatically using it on runtime. It's really cool. I think that's really cool, but they say that they don't like the integration, that it was really hard. So you can give it a try. Check these cases to this. If you are not convinced, I'm not trying to sell it, but you can give it a try. If these huge companies are doing it, you can maybe give it a try. It's fully optional. So let's go now to the part that we are talking about Kotlin Multiplatform and Kotlin Native. So at the end of the day, what you are going to have in Kotlin Multiplatform is a code base that is going to be written in Kotlin. You might have access to Android and iOS part that we are going to be talking in a couple of slides. But once you have this code in Kotlin Multiplatform, you are going to go over the Kotlin compiler, and the Kotlin compiler is going to give us a multiple type of files, depending on what you want and what you want to use. For Android, you will end up with something with the JVM. And when I say the JVM, I mean Java 6 and Java 8. So for Android, you are going to end up with a jar or a AAR that you can use in your Gradle. Just put it in your Gradle and you're ready to go. For GS, you're going to end up with things for Node and maybe for the browser. That's really cool. And for iOS, you will end up with Kotlin Native. That will give you binaries for iOS, for Windows, inclusive even for Mac. Can give you, if you want to use NDK for Android version, you also gonna have a Kotlin Native. But this is a really cool part. At the end of the day, you are gonna have a framework for iOS and a Gradle and a file that is gonna be a library that you can put in your Gradle. and a framework that you can put in a Cocoa pod. There has some limitations in there because you might use Cocoa pods, but you cannot use Sweep pods. There is some integration missing there, but they are working on it. But you're going to have that. You're going to have that library. You're going to have two separate versions of it. And let's talk about a little more about the native binary for iOS, because this part, I know if you are a Swift fan, this part is relying on Objective-C. And what I say is relying is because the Objective-C code that you're going to end up is going to be headers, but they are going to be annotated in a Swift matter. So it's going to be really cool. You're going to end up with code that you want to use. It doesn't going to look like Objective-C that is really awful. No, it's going to look beautiful. So they are working on Swift. It's on the roadmap, and they are working on it. And for Android, you are going to have with this implementation, this library that you can put on Gradle, in your Gradle file, and just be happy with it. And obviously, Kotlin has interoperable code that is fully supported for Java. And so if you have a code base that is full in Java, you don't have to change anything. You can still go with your library that is in Kotlin. And what you are going to have at the end of the day in terms of files is that you will have these three files, three folders. You're going to have a common folder that is going to have fully Kotlin metadata and Kotlin code, that it's only Kotlin. There's nothing, not in Android, not in iOS. This is Kotlin. And for the part of the folder that is going to have iOS, you are going to have the possibility to start addressing some libraries of iOS. Maybe you want to have, I don't know, local authentication, maybe Aave Foundation, maybe Core ML, or some accounts, El CloudKit or something like that. You can color it in here in this specific part. So you can use it for that. And for Android, you are going to have things that you can access for Android, like the sharp preference, like the biometrics. Maybe you want to access some specific stuff for Android, maybe store data, or maybe some security crypto library, etc., etc. You can have it. And this is what you're going to have in your library. You're going to have a block that is going to be common, and the junction with the Android part that you want to have it, but be smaller. It's going to be this mixture of these two blocks is going to be your Kotlin Multiplatform library that you are going to be able to use on your Android project. For iOS, it's going to be the same without the middle block of Android. That's what you are gonna end up. It's gonna be a framework, and you can put it in your manager of Cocoa pods in Xcode, or you can use Android Studio to manage the Cocoa pod, run the project from Android Studio, and doing it. And this is because the Kotlin group, the Kotlin. The company that is working on Kotlin is JetBrains, right? So they made this incredible plugin that you can find on your Android Studio. I totally recommended you to download it, to give it a try, because it's amazing, and gives you the chance to have a new module that is going to be the last one that you see in this image. That is going to be KM, Kotlin Multiplatform Chart module, that you can start using without doing the configuration by your own. You don't have to do it. It's really plain simple doing it with the wizard. So that's really amazing. And the most incredible part of this plugin is that now you have an option to have an iOS application with an execution target that is an iPhone, or that is something else. And you can check your code using Android Studio and check your tests using Android Studio. And that's really amazing. That's one of the more incredible parts. Usually when you are doing a framework, you have to go to the other, to Xcode or app code, and try to see if the things that you do are running okay, right? But with this, you only need Android Studio to develop your Kotlin Multiplatform plugin, your Kotlin Multiplatform library. So at the end of the day, what is going on in here is that you are going to have two types of things that you can use to develop Kotlin multi-platform code. The first part is that you are going to have libraries that are already Kotlin multi-platform first support. Yeah, full support. So they are going to be living in, sorry, they're going to be living here in this block. And you are going to have libraries that are only Android and iOS. And that's really cool because this complements what the Kotlin multi-platform proposition of value is. So the part of sharing logic has to depend of two things. The first part is that you are going to have these keywords that are going to be working around your app, your library. That is going to be a spec function. And a spec function is a function that is going to be living in the common block, in the green block, and an actual declaration if you want to use it for iOS specific parts. Imagine you want to do, I don't know, maybe, I have an example, sorry. And you might have this integration for iOS and Android too, right? And you can import libraries on the iOS library in JVM libraries on the Android side. That's really cool. You still have the power of Android and iOS without losing anything. For example, for saving a value, and I'm talking about a primitive value for Android. For iOS, you can have any user defaults, right? That is very much a mapper that has a value and a key. And for Android, you can have shared preference. So you are going to start in the common block, start addressing this a value, but as soon the Kotlin compiler knows that you are compiling for an Android, it's gonna keep you with the purple block. It's gonna save that block, and it's gonna delay the other part because it doesn't want it. And for iOS, when you are creating your framework, you're going to have the save value, and you are going to have the any user defaults that are already there for iOS only proposition. And at the end of the day, you might want to start doing this for everything you are doing it, but it doesn't make any sense because if you are doing it for everything, then why you are using Kotlin multi-platform, right? But what you want to do is to have the common block to be bigger than the Android and iOS, right? This block should be the sharing code part, and the Android side and the iOS side should be thinner. Should have only the logic that you need most, like the basic stuff, like these things, like a shared preference, because obviously you are not going to have shared preference in Kotlin because it doesn't depend of the platform. So what you want to have is that the Kotlin common model be bigger and be more expensive should be tested at the end of the day with a little of more conscientiousness, so you can give it a try and try to develop this special common part to the Android side and the iOS side, and you don't have to just grind your logic again. And for that part, for the part that you want to use common models, you can have a lot of libraries that are already Kotlin multi-platform support first, like Ktor for HTTP clients that you want to have, and we have Kotlin serialization for the codables and codables, and having some parsables of the information. This is for I/O for network requests, and we can have Apollo. We have Apollo of GraphQL, and this is amazing. This is amazing because it was built by the community, and it was built by a lot of engineers in GraphQL. So this is huge. Imagine you are pushing data with Apollo. Apollo works with a lot of queries. So you have a query, and this query is going to go to your server, and this gonna push data from the server, right? If the query is grown by, or maybe you pick some different limits, or maybe you go and do some different filters or order bys or things like that, you're going to have different data. Imagine you can delay this worried tools and just put it on Kotlin Multiplatform. The same queries you are going to be using on Android, on iOS, Windows, in Mac, in GES, everything can be the same. Same data all the time. If we have a bug, we have a bug everywhere. I know that sounds creepy, but you can have it and give it the proper go of the same data. And for me, that's the most important part. So Apollo has Kotlin multi-platform support, like first generation support, and we can have a lot of database, SQLiteDelight, Codeline, SQLiter. There's relational and non-relational tables here. Databases, and you can have this, and you can even encrypt it. So that's really cool. You can have support of databases that are going to give you exactly the same process that Apollo. Queries that are the same for everywhere. And the most incredible part, and probably one of the parts that you can start trying, is Kotlin datetimes, because who wants to have to parse all the formats of the data of your dates everywhere? This is probably one of the cool parts that you can start using to give it a try to Kotlin multi-platform, because it's really, really, really simple to do. It's just the dates and the times, and you can parse it and see that it works for you or not. So we are going to be talking about Ktor for multi-threading, because multi-threading the threads are difficult in Android and iOS, right? Why? Because this depends on concurrency. Concurrency is that you have, this is an example of network requests, but concurrency can happen without network, right? You can have your app, and your app is going to have some HTTP client. For this specific case, we are going to be talking about Ktor. So this HTTP client is going to be Ktor. You might have a network interceptor, maybe not. And you go to the internet. I don't care. It's just the internet. Maybe it's just a server, someplace, wherever you want to have it. Maybe a WS, maybe a WebSocket. At the end of the day, you go to the internet. And you might, of the other side, have some interceptor to connect your app, right? That's pretty much what a network request today is what it does. And we need to think mainly because we have the application thread that we are already talking about, and the reader thread. The reader thread is the thread that goes to give us the answer of a network request. So if you are doing a network request and you are waiting for the response, this delivery of the data is going to be the reader. And at the end of the day, you're going to have a mutable thread that you can, what it means when a mutable thread is that is one thread that you cannot use for two things at the same time, right? This is specifically saying that you cannot use it for UI and network connections, for example. And you can have multiple threads, but this is a freeze state. This is really, really complex, because you don't want to have memory leaks or threads that you are not closing or crashes. If you ever have a concurrency bug, you know that actually is really difficult to debug, to even find. But so you have to be really careful with your threads. There's a talk about Kevin Galligan that is, he specifically addressed this part of concurrency on Kotlin multi-platform. Today we are going to be giving just a little introduction, really simple, about what is going on in here. Because at the end of the day, you are going to have some type of a library. Maybe it's Salam on Fire, maybe it's Retrofit, maybe it's Moshi, maybe it's whatever you want. And we have the part that is decodable and encodable. Maybe you are using JSON, maybe you are using Moshi. At the end of the day, you are parsing a string that is coming from your server to an object that you can use on your app, right? And you can have RX Swift combined, maybe RX Java, and maybe Coroutines. And today we are going to be talking specifically about Coroutines, because we can use Ktor, Kotlin Serialization, and Coroutines to give you support on Kotlin multi-platform common model. So you can have all your network's connections and try to deliver data from your server using only these three tools, uh, and share it with Android, iOS, GS, whatever you want. So today, at the end of the day, what you are going to have is that Ktor needs an engine to start, right? So you are going to have to create your own engine on iOS side, and you have to create your engine on Android. After that, you can start using it in a repository to drop some data and try to start using Ktor and Kotlin serialization to get the data, right? So you go to you create your engine, everything is cool. You start getting your data, trying to deliver some data. And I want you to take special attention on the word suspend. Suspend is a keyword that we use in Kotlin, especially in coroutines, to say that is going to be a suspendable function. A suspendable function means that you are going to be waiting for a response. So imagine you are launching a ball to another person. This part, when you are waiting to the ball go to the arms of the second person, that part is a suspend computation example. So maybe you have your client, and maybe you have this list of docs that is already in a server or maybe somewhere else, and you can use Ktor and Kotlin serialization to get that data, and parse that information. Just straight up simple. That's the only thing you need. That's the code for having a HTTP client with Ktor and Kotlin Multiplatform. And you might say, okay, that's really cool because we can get docs and go to the function that is get docs, and it's going to be suspendable. But coroutines does not exist on iOS, right? So at the end of the day, a coroutine is a suspendable computation process. And obviously, Kotlin Multiplatform has full support of Kotlin. If you are already an Android developer and you are already using coroutines, you know the power on it. They are amazing. You have float, you have you have cold streams and hot streams, and you are probably very comfortable with it, right? Uh, what is going on in here is that a coroutine, what it's going to do is that maybe you have your user, and your user is going to do some interaction. Maybe it's a click, maybe it's a scroll, maybe it's some login or something like that in your app, and that click is going to be running on the UI thread. And the second part, when we go to the server, is going to be running in a coroutine thread, a dispatcher specifically for that part. So this secondary thread cannot be used at the same time. So it's making it immutables. For the part when you get the data for iOS and Android, for Android is really easy, right? You put that is a suspendable function. Maybe you have a view model, and the view model you can get the data, and that's it. You can start giving it a go. For iOS, for the defaults of iOS, you are going to have something different. You're going to have a suspendable function in the Kotlin common model that is going to be get products, that you go and get some products, maybe a list of supermarket or something like that. And then you are going to have to do this part, coroutine plus the dispatcher, because you are going to have to run in a specific scope that is the place when the coroutines can live. And this scope can be launched with application dispatcher. It means that is the dispatcher of the general application. And you just have the model that goes for the products, right? It is really cool because you will be able to launch this code from iOS with something as simple as this. Maybe you are going to have a controller, maybe a view model, etc. You are going to have get products, and get products is going to be a list, and you can do something with the products. And it's pretty much really simple, right? Sorry. It's really simple because you are going to have the ability to just address the code that you have in your common model from your iOS perspective. So if you are doing it maybe in a use case or maybe in the domain layer or something like that, you will be able to do it. Just straight up simple. And for Android is the same. So that's the magic of Kotlin Multiplatform. You are gonna be delegating your logic and your network connections to this part for the common module. And that's it. That's it. That's simple. And for databases, I know there's a lot of questions about databases because we handle databases and process in a different way. And at the end of the day, you depend of the CPU architecture of how to do it. But this is pretty much cool, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because you can create using SQLiteDelight some table, right? And it's pretty simple, right? It's a product list that has a product ID and a name, and you can insert or replace information from it. And it's really simple, right? It means that this is probably things that we have in our daily applications. Maybe a little more complex because these only have two values, but it can be a little bit more complex. And you can have an expected function for creation of the product DB. This database need to be created outside the common model. This code is gonna be in the common model, but the creation, the spec function is gonna go and need the integration on the Android side and the iOS side, right? So you can have your product repository, and this is pretty much simple, no? You get the API, the DB, and you got your queries, and you can fetch the list of products that you have, and fetch the products and insert the elements to the database. So this has to be running on a suspendable function, right? Because at the end of the day, you are connecting to a database, to a network request, and this network request is going to be connecting to an API. So products API dot fetch products is going to be a suspendable function. So the only way to access to this function is using the keyword suspend. And you might have experience using RxJava or maybe RxSwift, and you know that this callback, this product available, if this RxSwift or RxJava, the next line is going to return a products available empty list. But for coroutines, it doesn't work like that. For coroutines, the next line is going to have values because it's got products ap.fetch products is a suspendable function. So we are going to await for the values to get dropped. And you can do that just in one line. It's so powerful. I love coroutines, so I get so excited to talk about it. So the next line you can fetch and make some to insert the values in just 4 lines, and you can return the list of products without any problem, right? So this is going to be in your common model. And for the part of the expected function, you have to create 2 databases. The first one is the iOS when you use a HttpClient driver, and the second part is your Android SQLite driver, right? So you might need a context. Don't worry about that. It's really cool. It's really simple to use it, and you are actually on Android. So this code that is in orange for iOS is going to have access to that part of the code. It's not going to be aware of it. So when we go to this part and we go to the line that you have private val product DB that creates a DB, this expect function actually is going to search for these 2 functions. For Android, it's going to go to the purple part, and for iOS, it's going to be on the orange one. So that's really cool because on iOS side, at the end of the day, after you create this actual, you can put your framework on your app, and you just can, in a view controller, maybe a controller, wherever you want, a use case, you can create the variable product repository. It's going to do all the things you have to do, and it's going to be able to fetch the products and get the data. So you are going to be able to populate a table view without any problem. And for Android part, you are going to be able to do that in a similar way. You have to do a product repository fetch product, and you might have to do some details for the fetch. But it's pretty much simple, right? That's it. That's it. That's all you need to do to start sharing some databases on iOS and sharing some network connections. You can start giving it a try to Kotlin Multiplatform. It doesn't have to be like a big compromise when you are getting married to just only using Kotlin Multiplatform. You can start doing it only with analytics to have less errors if you want to see it that way. You can start doing it with really small things like your dates, maybe some Apollo query, a small Apollo query. Maybe you want to do some databases if you want to have more, a little beginning with Kotlin Multiplatform, a little more complex. Or you can just start with something as simple as a UIDD, just with that. So I want you to give you this last stuff of this talk. You can do a lot of things, like from database to network, or really simple things like your analytics. Kotlin Multiplatform is getting bigger every day. Like you can see already, Netflix is doing it, Cash App and Square, they are doing it. Touchdown obviously is doing it. VMware, there's a lot of things going on in there. The community is enormous, so you are never going to have something that, for example, a bug that no one else already knows that they can solve. So there is a Slack channel, there is a huge community in JetBrains, it has all the support. It's really getting bigger, and it's not only the hype for Android engineers, it's also the hype for a lot of companies and iOS folks that they want to have some ways to deliver sharing code without giving up Swift UI, for example, or combine. So my recommendation is to give it a try. You are going to have the time of your life. I promise you that. And the roadmap is really solid, actually. We're still in alpha, and I know it's alpha, it's not even a release candidate yet, but it's getting there. It's getting there. So there's a lot of things that they are working on, like fixing a lot of bugs. We have a couple of bugs in there, and improved dependency management for iOS. This is one of the parts that for me is more important. It's really cool. It's getting there. They are also working to have a sweep bots and support for sweeps, so we don't end up with objective header annotations. And there's a lot of code, like sharing code with the GVM between, and improvement the Gradle and compiler errors, because let's be honest, that's probably the worst parts of an Android engineer, to work with Gradle and the parts when you get broke. So it's public till roadmap. You can find it on Kotlin Multiplatform site. Give it a try, guys. You're gonna have the time of your life. I promise you that. Go and follow Kevin Galligan, Joe O'Reilly, and a lot of engineers that are doing this, doing workshops, doing video conference and things like that. They are doing it amazing. And that's pretty much all for Kotlin Multiplatform. I forgot to change the title, but it's a perspective for multi-platform. So thank you so much, guys. I hope you have enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, I'm really happy to answer it.
Yeah, I just want to open the floor for questions. Thank you so much for that. I found that very enjoyable. From my perspective, are there any considerations for testing Kotlin multi-platform versus is it just like unit testing the same way I would test logic in a Kotlin project?
Looks kind of the same. You have to do some different stuff. At the end of the day, you are going to be testing the code that you have on Android and the code that you have on iOS, and also the code you have in the common models, right? So it's pretty much the same. You're gonna doing pretty much the things that you are doing. But the really cool part is that you can have the iOS testing running on your Android Studio. So that's a really cool part. I don't have to open my Xcode just to run tests. I can make sure that my tests are working and that I'm not doing a bad job to the iOS faults. So that's really cool.
I try never to open Xcode. So
I know it's like a difficult process.
Were there any pain points from some of those bigger companies that added Kotlin multi-platform that they talked about in those articles that we should watch out for?
Okay, there's a lot. You are gonna find this is an alpha, so there is downfalls.
Sure. Yeah.
Like it's not like walking on roses or something like that. You are gonna have some details, especially in the configuration, because at the end of the day, you want to have a simple configuration for the folks, right? For the Android, for the Windows, for the GS, for the iOS team. So that configuration is going to be tricky. At the beginning of Kotlin Multiplatform, you have to do all the configuration by hand. Write your own Gradle files. If you got something wrong, you have to start over again. It was awful. Kevin Galligan made even a template for it. Like, here is the template. You don't have to get worried and do it again. But with the wizard of Android Studio, now you can do it. There is still a couple of things that you cannot do on Xcode and not using Android Studio. So the integration is going to be difficult for that part. That's probably one of the things. Concurrency is a topic that you need to be aware of it. It's not straight up simple, not like you can imagine. If you have only cold streams, like you shot and get information, you are going to be okay. But if you have something like WebSocket and things like that, you might want to be careful.
Does anyone else have any questions before we wrap up? I want to be mindful of everyone's time, but I so appreciate you joining us today. And I'm so glad that you came back to Women Who Code for another really presentation.
I'm really happy. It's like coming back to home.
All right. Well, then I'm going to